Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. My heart fills with great honor and happiness in introducing Van Geshe Dorji Damdul. Geshe Dorji Damdul, who is the director of Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, has been residing in Delhi since 2005. Van Geshe Dorji Damdul has served as the official translator to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Van Geshe has completed his studies from Institute of Buddhist Dialectics (IBD) in Dharmashala, Dripung Monastic University, and Gyumed Tantric College. Serving as a fellow in Cambridge University, England in 2003, he was appointed as a visiting fellow at Delhi University to give lectures in three of the university's departments: philosophy, psychology, and Buddhist studies. He was involved in working on several important books of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, such as Beyond Religion and Emotional Awareness. He is in the process of writing two important books, one on the journey into the paradox of brain and mind, and the other, What Constitutes the Ultimate Reality, the Effects of Understanding the Ultimate Reality. He gives lectures and leads philosophy and psychology classes in various universities like Delhi University and Jawaharlal Nehru University and Tibet House, Delhi. He also travels widely in India and abroad to teach Buddhist philosophy and lead intensive retreats. He is widely recognized as Buddhist scholar imparting knowledge among the students and other intellectuals. So please join your hands and give a warm welcome to Mr. Van Geshe Dorji Damdul.
Thank you. Welcome you all on the Happiness Day. United Nations having adopted today is the Happiness Day. Dr. Vikramji and all your team members from United Consciousness, it's a great joy, honor, and a deep sense of admiration in all the wonderful work that you and your team have been doing. So today, my talk is on the happiness, how to create this happiness. So we need to, the first thing that we need to, that I'd like to share with you is that back in 2008 in Delhi University, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was invited to give a public address, at the end of the talk, during the question and answer session, one of the girls, young girl, asked His Holiness as to what is the purpose of life, what is the meaning of life. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, without a second thought, said, "We live on hope, and we hope for happiness." So the happiness, the genuine happiness, is the purpose of a life. So this is what takes us to our talk today. And to know what the happiness is, or how to create about this happiness, you also need to know what are the deterrent factors, what can potentially hinder one and the community from experiencing this happiness. So as the United Consciousness, the group which Dr. Vikramji created, this has identified what is known as the 14 divides. We see that the moment when the divide is created, naturally both sides are unhappy. So we see that there are divides in the form of gender discrimination, on the basis of the religious discrimination, on the basis of the discrimination of the ethnicity, discrimination of the status, and so forth. There are they identified 14 divides. And I personally would say that if we can really look to bridge this divide or to get rid of this divide, then the world will really see a day of happiness, a genuine happiness. And so now to bridge this divide or to heal the humanity of these ills, the evils of the discrimination, divides. What is important is to think of solutions. We also always talk about happiness, happiness. We should be kind towards each other. But the point is that how can we really create this happiness, or what are the solutions to that? This is the point. So for that matter, we need to think of, say, what is the short-term solution, long-term solution, and happiness for the individual and happiness for the community. That is so important. And when you speak about happiness, it transcends religions, it transcends the ethnicities, it transcends the political borders. Everybody seeks happiness, whether you are, say, the Muslims or Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Christians, Jews, Baha'i, and the Parsis, or non-believers. Everybody seeks happiness. Nobody wants suffering. COVID-19 has taught us that we're all equal. With COVID-19, no one religion is saying that, okay, we are free from COVID-19. No ethnicity is saying that we are free from COVID-19. The COVID-19 doesn't know the border of the religion, that doesn't know the border of the ethnicity, border of the gender, and so forth, and the border of the hierarchy, border of the caste, and so forth. It just permeates through all, across the humanity. So keeping this in mind, we need to look for the ways and means by acknowledging the fact that everybody seeks happiness, nobody wants suffering. This is the one point, and we need to also keep in mind that in terms of the global, for a larger community, UNO adopted the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, in 2005. And they aim to create about equality among the humanities in terms of the removing the poverty and so forth by 2030. So this is incredibly global goal, the global, say, the goal that they aspired is extremely noble. And so now the point is that how can we create about this happiness for the individuals, for the groups, short term, long term. Long term, of course, the long term is the which I like to touch a little bit later, and the short term and for the individuals. What is so important is to think of how you interact with the world. When you interact with the world, usually whenever something goes wrong, we tend to look for some external objects to be blamed, particularly your neighbors, your family members, or somebody from the opposite gender, from the other nationalities, and so forth. This is what we tend to, and for other nations, and so forth. This is what we tend to do. And finally, the reality, the beauty of the reality is that it doesn't matter. It's not that you have to be good, you have to be kind, you have to be compassionate, and so forth. But the thing is, what do you want? What do you want? And I oftentimes tell people that we need to keep two things in mind. First of all, okay, forget about the happiness for the world, happiness of your neighbors, of others, and so forth. Just think of trying to make yourself happy. Only if you are happy, you can export happiness. If you're not happy, how can you export happiness? How can you talk happiness if you're not happy yourself? So for that matter, the point is that you should be happy. So the first line, which I always say, is that be kind to yourself. Meaning, give yourself the happiness. Stay away from miseries. Stay away from pains. This is number one. Number two, be wisely kind to yourself, which means that in the pretext of giving yourself happiness, in the pretext of getting rid of your suffering, for example, you have tension, you go to whiskey. In the pretext of enjoying, you go for Coca-Cola. So this is all destruction of your health. And this is not at all being kind to yourself. This is a very unwise way of being kind to yourself. So the second line says, be wisely kind to yourself. Then the question is, how can I be wise to be kind to myself? This next question. So, for that matter, let us see how our mind plays, the psychology of our mind. We see that whenever there's a problem, we tend the blame always go towards somebody else. Whenever there is good thing, success, the credit always goes to the self. There's nothing wrong in it. The point is that this attitude does it really give happiness, or this serves as a cause of miseries? So, in this connection, what I'd like to share with the audience here is that we need to have a broader perspective, learn how to have a broader perspective in time and in space. Think back in time, like 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1 million years ago, zero point 0.3 million years ago, when the human being first evolved on the earth, and go in the future. So, what the world is going to be like, the next generation, the next generation. After 1 million, after one, I say 1,000 years ago, if you cannot really think about 1 million years ago, million years in the future, at least think about what the world is going to be like after 100 years, the next generation, the next generation. If you have this broad picture in time and then in space, what are we like? And what do we like in the solar system? What do we like in the Milky Way galaxy? And what do we like in the whole universe? We are just a tiny dot in the vast expanse of the space. So from that point of view, so we are so vulnerable, so insignificant. And within this insignificant dot, we have been fighting. So if you see things from very broad perspective in space, we see that there's no room for us to fight against each other. We have to embrace each other to save our own vulnerabilities, or to protect us from the vulnerabilities. So with this in mind, how to protect ourselves, and I'm only about the next the 3 minutes. So within this 3 minutes, what I'd like to share with you is that we need to say the whole our attitude, say happiness, unhappiness. Happiness is a state where your mind simply rests in peace. And the unhappiness is a state of the opposite of the rest, which is disturbance. When does the mind feel the disturbance? That is when the unpleasant feeling arises within you. What creates this unpleasant feeling? This is the cognitive wrong thinking, cognitive thought process, erroneous cognitive thought process, erroneous cognitive thought process in terms of distorting the reality, and in terms of very narrow-minded, short-sighted and narrow-minded, narrowness in your thinking and short-sightedness in your thinking, and then the distortion of the reality. These three cognitive thought processes are responsible to create about the unpleasant feeling within you. That, in order to protect you from this unpleasant feeling, you look for ways. You don't know how to save yourself, so then it simply starts to agitate. So that is the meaning of unhappiness. And then you extend this towards your family, towards your at the workplace, and towards your country, towards the whole nation, and between the nations, they find the countries find all because of this. So how to get rid of this? The point is that let us not give doctrine. Let us not give, say, the dogma to say that be kind, be compassionate. How to be kind? How to be compassionate? I like to do it, but it's not happening. How to do it? This is where the teachers should really come to help. So the point is that we have to know that, let's say that the same object can give you happiness, whereas the same object can give you unhappiness, depending on how you think. So this is what we need to introduce to the people. For example, let's say when you are alone, if you have a wise thinking, you say that I'm so lucky I have a privacy. But if you don't have this wise thinking, you say that I'm very lonely. Whereas if you're with other people, wise people will think that I'm not lonely, I'm so happy. And the unwise people say that I have no privacy. So this is how the same situation for the wise people can create happiness, for the unwise people will create miseries. So now, how can we rectify this thought process? So there, all these thought processes are involved with the environment, your friends, your family members, and your colleagues at your workplace, and all the people around, people from other nations, and so forth. So what we do is that We tend to always look at other objects as the objects of blame. And whereas, who is the happy person? For example, look at Mahatma Gandhi, look at Martin Luther King Jr., look at Mother Teresa, look at Jesus Christ, look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama today. We see that all these people are happy because they see other people not as the object of blame. They see them as a source of benefit. So we see that the moment you see that we are all dependent on each other, and COVID-19 rightly taught us that we are all dependent. This tiny, tiny, tiny virus taught us that we are not at all independent. Oh, I'm a Buddhist, you are non-Buddhist. I'm a Hindu, you are non-Hindu. I'm Muslim, you are a non-Muslim. No, this is a COVID-19 doesn't know that you are Hindu, you are Buddhist, you are Jain, you are Muslim, you are Christian, and so forth. So it only taught us that we are all dependent on each other. So for your own survival, others are so important. For example, say, everywhere in the world, you start to give the jabs or the injections. But one country is so poor that cannot provide injection to its population. Because of which even the well-off people in the same country, they can easily be affected by COVID-19 because of the others in the same country. And these rich people from that country will travel to the other countries. They will bring the same problems everywhere. See, it doesn't mean that you have the jab, you will not have the COVID-19. That's not true. I know I have some friends who already received the jab twice, and yet they contracted COVID-19. I know that. So the point is that whole world is going to be vulnerable as long as one part of the world remains vulnerable. So if you're wise, we should learn how to take care of, embrace everyone in the world. So this interdependency, understanding interdependency, that the world is for my happiness, not that the world is to blame for my problems. If this is what we realize, the interdependency, then the divides will dissolve and harmony will come into being. And harmony is the ground, the fabric of happiness. Thank you so much.
We are delighted to thank Geshe ji for sharing his view on happiness, the ultimate goal of life. His insight would definitely be useful for everyone. Thank you so much.